I thought someone was behind me, thought I was being watched. And I turned around and I saw a big black man, and he walked into the feed room that I'd just come out of. So I called to him because you don't want to see a stranger there. And he didn't answer, so I went in and I looked. And there was no one there.
I went into the washroom and I saw a woman. I could not speak, I could not move, I was frozen.
When I was 15 or 16, I worked at the racetrack with thoroughbreds, and I enjoyed it a lot. So I had a friend in Florida, Samantha, and she had 3 horses, and she was breeding thoroughbreds for the track. And it turned out that they weren't fit enough to start, so I had her move the horses to a new barn instead of on her own property. And we selected one with Rachel, a friend of hers, and she needed help, so I offered to help, and it turned into a permanent position. It's the best opportunity I've been given yet. I've worked at some great jumping barns, but this would be my first in-depth racing stable job.
Ghosts. If they're around, where do they hang out? We all know the answers. Spooky old houses, foggy graveyards, dark woods late at night. But do some research and you find stories of ghosts in just about any location you can imagine. It's not the place that really matters, it's what happens in that place. Find a site of tragic, violent, or sudden death, and chances are good someone will report they've seen a ghost. Hi, I'm Lawrence Chow. Today's ghostly encounters involve a man and a woman who believe they have seen the ghosts of murder victims. Heather Veet went to Florida to follow her dream of training racehorses. She left when that dream became a nightmare connected to a violent death long ago. And sunny Florida wasn't quite so sunny anymore.
Well, Rachel was moving barns. She had just acquired a larger farm. We had just moved over 5 horses, and it was my first day feeding there alone at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was in the feed room making up the feed for the 5 horses. And I went outside to bring in the horses to feed them. And I brought in 3 horses. The 4th filly wouldn't go in her stall. She wouldn't go near it. And I tried to force her. She just balked at that. And I turned around, and I thought someone was behind me, thought I was being watched. It wasn't a feeling of friendliness, though. And I turned around, and I saw a big black man he's not wearing a shirt, but he's wearing an overalls, kind of, like they wear at the racetracks. And he walked into the feed room that I'd just come out of. So I called to him because you don't want to see a stranger there at that time of morning. I said, "Hello, can I help you? What do you want? Why are you here?" I yelled it pretty much, just, make myself appear bigger, I guess. And he didn't answer, so I went in and I looked. And there was no one there. It was a rather small feed room. Nowhere to hide. The entrance to the field was still blocked off, so he couldn't have escaped. I heard clicking, and we'd been having electrical problems, so I thought it was the lights about to go out, so I was gonna go. I looked around to see. I didn't know where the fuse box was. So I went looking for him. And he was gone. the stall doors. The two behind me started slamming. And they're big iron rod gated. They're all the way to the ceilings, so they make a lot of noise. And I'm running as fast as I can, but the doors are still slamming. They're beating me to the end. All I wanted to do was get out of there. So I got back in the car and I drove back to the other barn, waited till it was light, and grabbed someone else, and then we went back to the barn together, because I wouldn't go back there alone. He did look real. To me, he looked real. Because men just don't disappear. Like I said, he was 6'3", maybe 400 pounds. Very muscular. I had, millions of dollars worth of horse flesh in that barn. And not that I could have done anything, mind you, but because he was slamming doors. And they're really hard to push closed. So if he can slam them, then I don't want to be there when he tries to slam me against the wall. That was my only time seeing him. Now, the friend I went to see in Florida, she went out for 2 days, left me with her dogs. I asked Rachel if it was okay if we used the stall, and she said that was fine as long as I took care of them. And that night, we put them into the stall. And I shut and locked the door. We turned off all the lights, locked the gate. And the next morning, when we all got there, it was about 7. And we noticed that there was blood all over the stall. And one of the dogs had been whipped so bad it cost $1,500 in vet bills. Being a horse person, I know what whip marks look like. Me and Rachel were the only one with the key to the property. The only other possible would be someone climbed over a 30-foot gate with spikes on top, broke into the barn, got into the stall with the dogs, which, being large breeds, would probably not happen, and do that, and then get back out without me hearing about it. Because the barn was from the 1800s, we thought maybe he had died tragically. It turns out that there was a death 30 to 35 years ago. It turns out that there was a death 30 to 35 years ago. It was ruled as one of the stallions had attacked one of the stallion handlers and killed him. But there was talk that it was the trainer who had been racist. Killed this black man and threw him into the stall to make it look like the horse did it. He is still a big racehorse owner, so I guess no one wanted to really go into depth with that because, being already one death, who wants to make it two? I wouldn't go there in the dark. I wouldn't go there alone. I started delegating all the duties that in the barn to other people, and I tried to steer clear from there as much as possible. I did all my handling out in the fields. I only went in there if I absolutely had to. If I had to get tack, if I had to get grooming tools. I didn't stay in there for an extended period of time. I couldn't do my job properly, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I hate being scared of things, and it was scaring me. And once it came to move completely over there, and I was supposed to move into a house next to the barn, I said, no, I've got to go. No way am I going to live next to this barn. I don't think he wants people there. I don't think it's specifically me because other people have seen him. I just think he doesn't want people there. And I was more than happy to go away. I've tried to go back to horses once, and then I got into a pretty bad accident because I'd lost the connection, I guess. Because I was always, now barns. Oh, especially older barns, which is where I went back to ride once or twice and worked for a little bit. And other than that, I just got out of it completely.
Heather mentions a filly that seems to sense the ghost and refuses to enter her stall. Our consultants note there are many stories of animals who are sensitive to the spiritual world. The Old Testament tells of the Hebrew prophet Balaam, who was asked to curse his own Israelite army by an enemy king. While traveling to do the king's bidding, Balaam's donkey stopped in its tracks and refused to move. It saw an angel which Balaam could not see. This story is not explicitly about the supernatural, but it does reflect the collective wisdom of the time, that animals may be more sensitive than humans to the unseen world. For Anthony Ennis, this unseen world was going to make itself very visible in the most unlikely of places.
My grandmother was a very interesting woman. She was in a community known to be very attractive, but beyond just her looks, known to be gifted. Now, gifted in a sense that what you'd consider psychic. Now, my father did not wish for us to have any belief in the supernatural because it just gets you negative attention. So I grew up in a Christian background, not believing, certainly not embracing anything supernatural.
Anthony tells us his grandmother was psychic, but his father was a firm believer in the hard facts of reality. Anthony was very much his father's son until the day he had an experience that convinced him beyond a shadow of a doubt that his grandmother was right.
First real ghostly encounter was not believing, growing up not believing anything like that, was in an apartment that this was our second apartment that we lived in Canada. It's in Scarborough, it's still there. One particular day, this is one very vivid memory that I had. What I'd do is wait until my mother's gone to sleep and then sneak back out and turn on TV and watch it. Hey, my mother thought I was in bed for the most part. This particular night, my bedroom door opened up. And I saw a bright light behind a figure. My bedroom door opened up, and I saw a bright light behind a figure. I could not really make out the face, but I heard the voice clearly. "What are you still doing up?" And it didn't sound like my mother's voice, but it was a feminine voice. As a child, the most foolish response and the most natural response, I said, just counting sheep. I said, well, just go to bed. I had a daily routine each morning because my mother worked 2 jobs, but this particular day, my routine got interrupted. I went into the washroom, and I saw a woman. Now, she shouldn't have been there because it was just my sister and I in the apartment. So I opened up my mouth to call Regina, but nothing came out. I froze. I could not speak. I could not move. I was frozen. And the woman was very attractive. She had long hair, long dark hair, long black hair, disheveled, just like messy and torn dress. She looked very fearful. She looked very much alive. As far as I'm concerned, that was a real woman. She was solid, 100% solid. The only difference is the interaction between me and her was that her presence kept me from moving. And she disappeared, like slowly faded away. And finally, when she was gone, I was able to call out my sister's name. My sister came running. She said, "Ricky," which what my family calls me. Why are you calling me? And I said, there was a woman in the bathroom. Of course, she thought this was crazy. I didn't mention it to my mother. She didn't mention it to my mother. It just stayed like that. Now, no amount of imagination can explain what I originally saw, because to be honest with you, last thing on my mind waking up that day was a ghost. Later on that day, as I went to school and met with my friend Danny, Danny said to me, "Did you know that there was a woman, she was raped and murdered in your apartment and thrown over the balcony?" This just came out off the top of his head, no prompting. I didn't mention anything to him, but I thought he would think that I was a lunatic. I wasn't about to say anything to Danny that, "Oh, by the way, Danny, I saw her this morning." Instead, I held my silence. I didn't tell anyone else. My sister was the only one that knew for many years. And then there was this irking feeling for years of maybe I should go back to the apartment. I went as far as walking up into the elevator, getting off on the 8th floor, then saying to myself, "This is ridiculous. Why am I being drawn here?" And that's it. Just didn't bother with it. Now, what followed, this was years after, this was earlier 90s. We would move someplace else. We were not too far away. Now, my little brother's father, which is different than my father, he said that he had to help a friend move from his apartment because his friend is very uncomfortable in the apartment, but his friend is afraid to go back to the apartment. I asked why. He said there's a ghost in the apartment. "I'll tell you what apartment your friend is in." I said, "Your friend is in apartment 812. He said, "How did you know that?" I said, "We used to live in that apartment." And I'll tell you something else. The ghost is a woman. Now, the whole thing with that is my mother immediately said, "How do you know about this woman?" And I said, "Well, I saw her." She said, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Because you think I'm crazy." She said, "No, I would have just moved." The weird thing about the whole thing is, to this day, I'm fighting myself when I go into a washroom. Doesn't matter if I'm visiting your house, because it just is that thing that developed. I just started to just pull it aside and take a look. I think that people who die violent deaths, and this is why I think she was there, then they leave a signature behind. I think it's like time intersecting. It's like you actually find something happening in the past that appears to be part of the present, but it's really the past. So far as the woman back in the apartment, perhaps she's doomed to enact her role in it forever, but so is her murderer, because the murderer is trapped in that time with his sins forever on his hands, blood-stained hands forever. There is no escaping what you've done. Your conscience, is a mechanism that has a greater sort of purpose than we've given it. It's not just to tell you wrong or right. It's also to warn you about those small things that will forever mark you. It could be that some people have around them an aura that allows them to either draw or connect with spirits, if you will, than other people would. I was a child when that happened. I wonder now, as an adult, would I be able to see something as complete? I believe that ghost, if you will, is a snapshot of the past. We're all ghosts. Sooner or later we have to die. There's no escaping it. So to say that I'm afraid of ghosts today, I'm not afraid of ghosts, because I am one. That's it. Somewhere in the future, I no longer exist. It's just, will someone see me?
To explain what he saw, Anthony talks about time intersecting. There's a scientific theory called time looping in which past and present intersect. It's as if we're seeing an old film being repeated over and over. Both Heather and Anthony believed they did more than just see ghosts. They also felt they could read the ghost's mood. Heather's is angry and unhappy. Anthony's is frightened and distressed. These reactions are only to be expected from people who died violently. In a way, this is kind of reassuring. It suggests that the world of the supernatural is coherent and rational.
I feel that it's possible that I may have taken on some of my grandmother's abilities. I may have been touched by her gift, and perhaps that makes me a little bit more sensitive to certain things. And maybe that's what happened when I was a child. Maybe I just got in tune with that kind of element where I can actually see something like that.
Ghosts really aren't my thing. Anyways, to begin with, friendly, mean, you know, makes no difference. They're ghosts. They scare me pretty bad.